Hi everybody, this is Christina, and I thought while we were waiting that we would take a moment and just connect with the crystal ball, and also to really set the intention that for this journey together, that your guides are with you and helping you to understand what is most important for your personal relationship with spirit and how they can help you to become more aware. So, as we just set this intention, just asking that your guides be with us. This is a smoky quartz alchemy ball. I really love this when I'm doing healing sessions, but it helps to release stress and tension, negativity, and it's also really good for the crown chakra. Okay, so just take a moment and invite your guides while you listen to the tones of the ball. Beautiful. And just take a moment and show up for yourself, also releasing all that stress. And it's weird energy here in Sedona right now because they're calling for all this snow, like 20 inches maybe. So everybody's like snowmageddon around here. So it's good to start with a little relaxation. So thanks for joining me. Hello. And I want to start with explaining a little bit what we're going to be talking about. And if you have questions also about guides, I hope that a lot of that's going to be answered from our talk with Spirit today. But also feel free to add those over in the comments as well so that we can make sure and get to those. But I want to differentiate between, there's so many different types of guides. So we have our personal guides, and within our personal guides are protectors. So their responsibility is protection of the physical, the emotional, the spiritual bodies. Then we have teaching guides. So those are the guides who work with us on our spiritual growth and development. They can also help us quite a bit on working on developing intellectually too, if that's part of your soul path or journey. If you're needing a little extra support in graphic design or in a particular area, then you can work with them on that. And then we have our personal guides who, in a more direct way, usually it's one guide who has the entire responsibility of having studied our charts, having studied our soul path gifts. They have had specific training in being a guide, and they one-on-one are working with you on the soul level to help set up all of the conditions and the circumstances so that you're able to grow and develop in the way that your soul knew was right for you in this lifetime. So the good news is we're never unprepared as much as we might think, because we've been prepping for this for lives, and we spent our whole period in preparation between to get ready for this one. So as much as once you arrive at that moment or you're feeling tested or challenged, guess what? You're not unprepared, and it's human. It's completely okay to feel that way, but you're not. But so our guides, a couple of things that are important to know is that they have, in addition to gone through training, they have lived at some point at least one earthly life. Usually they are, considered wise, intelligent. There are a few frequencies above us in our vibrational rate because they're helping to guide us and support us along, but they have to be close enough to be able to relate and to understand what it is that we're going through. And what's so interesting about the personal guides that people don't have a tendency to realize is that those beings, because they have to work on our frequency and be very attuned to what's happening with us in the emotional levels, on the spiritual level, on the human level, is that they have to really, there's an element, I don't want to say of sacrifice because they don't see it that way. It's perfection in their journey, But there's an element where they're so close to us energetically that when we're going through hard times, they are feeling that as well. Now, they don't get wrapped into all the ego like we do, and thank goodness for that, but they are certainly kind of taking one for the team in working more directly with us. They're also trained in whatever their specialty happens to be. So you're not going to have somebody who energetically isn't going to work well with your frequency. Okay, so now we have to keep in mind that the soul energy and the ego energy are just different. And so how your ego and your conscious self may want or present itself may not be what your soul actually needs, or how the soul as a whole chooses to present itself. Kind of like we can show up in a female body or we can show up in a male body. Doesn't necessarily mean the soul has a specific gender quality. Okay, so wanted to mention those types of things because as we start getting into what our spirit guides can and can't do, there's so much that we can utilize a little bit more by just having a conscious relationship. And right before this, guys, I'm going to show this to you because it was so crazy. So last night I was working on a blog about affirmations for connecting with the spirit guides, and I'll tell you more about that later, but you can always look at them now. But so I was printing it out because I was like, well, there might be something I want to reference. Okay. But all right, so the blog itself has these elements, and the main part is getting into what are old, you can't really see it because the light, what are old negative beliefs, and then what that are really common when it comes to, hey Bree, when it comes to connecting with spirit. What are those fears, the elements that cloud our energy and create this subconscious conflict between having a clear connection. But what's interesting is that when I printed this out, the old beliefs, I don't think you can really see it, show up here like gobbledygook. It's got all these symbols over it. And then you have the affirmations that are showing up perfectly. And I thought, wow, what a perfect example of how our guides are like, nope, cancel, clear, delete that old mess. You guys definitely need to let that go. So anyway, it happened right before, so I thought that was just interesting about, hey guys. So as far as what they can do, one is really work in general on our behalf. So they're always doing this consistently. Okay, we don't have to ask them specifically to step into a situation that we're having a hard time in, because they have spent so much time in preparation before this life, during this life. They're seeing all the consequences of every possibility and every decision. Can you imagine that? Wow, all of that at one time. And so they are really actively engaged at all times in this process of helping us to be clear in our growth and development, and also for our path to be clear, to allow and support even more growth and development, because they're really invested ultimately in us moving to the next frequencies and to the next level. But we can ask their help, for example, if you're having conflicts or having challenges with someone. It can be a relationship, it can be a coworker. Hey Katie. It can be just a situation where maybe it's an old friend. So I'll use a personal example. Recently I had a situation where I had a conflict with someone that really went unresolved for years. And it's one of those things that kind of sits with your energy for a long period, where you've got this kind of holding on in the back of the mind. And so I had asked one of my guides to help in this process of creating some resolution in the situation, both within my energy and helping me to make sure that I had learned the lesson that I needed to in that experience, and also to create a bridge between me and that other individual's soul, so that both of us had received the highest experience that we could have. And what was really interesting is that things kind of circled themselves back around. There was all of these moments kind of popped in about personal lessons for me that were affecting the situation and relationship. And then from there, once I had resolved those things, there was a moment of getting to reconnect with this person and come to like full circle. And all of that energy was dissipated and was gone. So we can ask for our guides just support in bringing those things to the surface, particularly if you've suppressed stuff, if you're holding on to really old issues and you're just feeling like you've been working on it, you've been raking it, you've been crystal vibing it, whatever it happens to be, and like it is just still there, then consciously giving your guides some of that feedback and inviting them into the scenario, into the situation of help me see this clearly, help me see what my next steps are, because ultimately, you know, things aren't designed to get stuck in our field when we're in that frequency. So our guides just help us to identify what it is that we need to shift there. They can also work with us on inspiration. So everybody comes into these periods of like the crossroads, okay? This space and this place of, I really don't know where to go, or, you know, I'm just like dead inside. What's, what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to heal? What's the next like growth opportunity? And so our guides love when we are kind of that blank canvas, when we can allow them to inspire us in a really direct way or share information with us. They can kind of put that billboard in the right place. They can have your friend happen to mention something to you about, oh, did you see this class about so-and-so? Well, it just so happens I've been thinking about that class, and like 3 other people talked about this class, and I just picked up the flyer for the class. So it's all this kind of convergence, but they can really help us to identify what's the best use of energy. Sometimes it's to kind of sit in that in-between place or that transition place and allow ourselves to go through the process of unfoldment. And sometimes it's, you know, we need a little bit of support to determine which our path happens to go in. And kind of in a similar way, we can have them help us with encouragement. So there's a particular type of guide called a joy guide. And this is kind of, we're going to blend the encouragement element with how do you get help with this. But there's a type of guide called a joy guide. And what joy guides do is that they're not necessarily with you in your presence all the time, but their responsibility is they work with your personal guide in order to, when things are stressful, really challenging, really difficult, and really heavy in your life, that they work with your primary guides to lighten your energy, to bring you humor, to help you to laugh, to support you and not feeling like you're Atlas with the weight of the world on your shoulders and overwhelmed and tired and exhausted. And so normally what happens is your primary guide will call them in at specific periods, sometimes even before the tsunami of stuff hits, and start kind of lightening some things up for you. So bringing in these, I have a really inappropriate sense of humor. So weird, inappropriate kind of things happen, and then it just makes me laugh, and it's very silly. And also like ego releases is something that that can work really well too. So then they'll start kind of planting these opportunities in, and then stay as long as we need them, or as long as our primary guide is helping us. They can sometimes come through and appear like children, or remind us to like work on the inner child, or to play, or to bring in light, you know, whatever that is in our life, not get so serious and stuck and heavy. But you can also ask your joy guides if you're in a space where you are feeling exhausted or overwhelmed, or like you've kind of gotten off track, things are just too serious, it's too much about work and responsibilities, and you just need a new perspective to open things up. Send a message, send a thought from your heart to your joy guides and ask for their help, ask for their support, so that you're able to get that little lightning, and you'll find that they show up right away. So it'll be that day or the next day. It's like, boom, here we go. And so it's nice. You can also, sometimes they'll have children come around you to try and lighten you up or just remind you of little things. I had something happen recently where some flowers were delivered to the house for Valentine's Day. Thank you, Robert. And so I had gotten the one set of flowers, and then, a few hours later, I get another knock on the door. And there's this person with this beautiful bouquet of flowers that I'm like, I've already got some of these flowers. And they're like, oh, it's fine. You can just keep this. And so I was laughing because I was having one of those days where it's like that Atlas moment. And so it was such a beautiful, it's like I got this Valentine's Day gift from Robert, and then I got this great Valentine's Day gift from my guides. So it was really sweet. So they can coordinate things like that, and that is more of a joy guides type of responsibility. So taking a little sidestep about teaching guides is that they can also work with us on the astral plane. And this is a really helpful, important element, particularly when you are dealing with things that can have your choice has significant consequences. Every choice one way or the other does, but when you're dealing with pretty significant crossroads like a move, divorce, when someone's getting ready to pass or transition, there's just these areas which have a lot of significance and a lot of different folks that can be affected by the situation. In those cases, we can work with our teaching guides to ask for their extra support in the astral realm. So this is when you go to sleep and your human body and its automatic processes continue as they need to, but your spiritual essence leaves the physical plane for a period of time to meet up with your guides in spirit. And in these processes, you can work out a lot of things where it's like trial and error. So you can try essentially an experience and then have the opportunity in the astral to see how it plays out, and then come back and be like, I didn't love the results of that, and then go back, try new things. So sometimes that will happen spontaneously, where your teaching guides are just kind of whisking you away, like, all right, you think this is the right direction. I don't know about this. Let's see how it plays out and then see what you think about it. Even in a little bit more of a loving way. So they can do things of that nature with us too. But you can also ask for, if you're struggling, if you're in a situation with a really high conflict scenario, or you're not sure which direction to go, you can talk to your teaching guides. Hey, I need some extra support. Can you help me in this process? Can you help me play out the scenario? That might not be the next night. It might not be the night that you make the intention, but everything's in divine timing. And when you do that, you'll come back sometimes with snippets and sometimes with just an awareness of, suddenly when I come back today, I don't feel great about that situation or great about that choice. And then that is telling us, okay, we need to revisit that because something's out of alignment there. So we can work those different scenarios out and sometimes meet with those that have crossed over. So if you have healing to do with someone that has already passed, and you've done the grief work, you've done the write the letter, you've really tried to process it, but sometimes the direct interaction is what's needed for a full release and full healing. Your guides will, you don't want to try and force that, but your guides will support you if that's the right direction for you, and will help you in a visitation type of atmosphere to create some healing. But of course, that's done in such a way that you're empowered in the process, that your guides are there working with this person's guides, and of course, creating this sacred and safe space for that healing or that sense of resolution to concern. I know I've had so many people who their loved one crossed over, their loved one passed, and they didn't get the chance to say goodbye. and then later had a visitation where that was able to be resolved for them. And that's all coordinated by your guides, which is beautiful. If you're feeling like you have some of those cords that are still out there and you need some extra help, just talk to them. You know, hey, I still feel unresolved with what happened with this person. Can you support me in that healing? And it may come to you in many different ways. We don't want to get too rigid with our guides where we start, we get the ego involved and start to demand, where it's, I want you XYZ. Listen, they are doing beyond what you can fully comprehend constantly for us. It's like NASA, at the control station, and advocating for us. And when things are heavy and a little supercharged, sometimes if we as a soul got really over ambitious and said, like, yes, I'd like to sign up for all of these things, all of these very difficult things, like right this moment, because I'm like the overachiever perfectionist type of soul. But then when the soul like comes into the incarnation, and as the human has to live it with all the emotions, with all of this, and really is having a hard time, your guide comes in and on your behalf is working to lighten your load, to be a little bit more realistic. There's a flexible plan, and to go, this is supposed to be loving, okay? And our life is loving, and our guides are here to show us self-love. So we have to sometimes learn self-love here on the earth plane. And sometimes that's learning how not to take on a million challenges at one time. So they're advocating to just kind of revise soul contracts sometimes if it needs to be. And that activity or engagement has to happen with the other person's guides. So it's kind of like mediation. They're sitting around going, listen, you need this for your person, I need this for my person, this is what they're going to create together. The timing, I don't know, what's the next step? Okay, so there's different things that they can do for us too with that. They can also help with just reinforcing our goals and our progress. So show of thumbs up, how many people struggle with recognizing sometimes the progress that you're making and celebrating yourself? Sometimes we can get into this mode where it's like, on solved one problem, on to the next. And so there's this challenge of not taking the time to celebrate our progress and the growth that we're making, and the times when that person tries to get us involved in that dynamic again, darn it, and we choose to not show up for that experience, or we choose to make a different decision that's based in love and unity for ourselves and all that's involved. They can remind us, like, listen, you're doing way better than you realize. We are here on this planet with amazing energies and the most incredible human inspiration of just souls like shining through. Y'all, we have social media where you can really choose what it is you're engaging with and have this beat of just inspiration of people doing such cool things for one another. That's, wow, just mind-blowing. And we have to recognize and celebrate those beautiful times. And sometimes our spirit guides have to just help us give ourselves that pat on the back that you might need, or that little extra support, or that little reminder that, listen, things are okay. They're really okay. And I wanted to mention this too about strengths, because this is one that is good for checking in really regularly. And I was thinking about this a lot when I was writing or doing some stuff around the indigos. So we're the indigo generation of like the sacred rebels. So those that are here to bust through the walls, break down the old institutions, and pave the way for greater sensitivity and intuition to be honored. And, it's in this lifetime and being social creatures, and sometimes it can be challenging as an indigo to recognize or realize that our strength is to go against the grain. It is to be different. And I had an insight where, so I was thinking about Facebook Live, which is such a weird concept for me, in that I love teaching and I love engaging, and but technology with my psychic energy just sometimes. And so I've always been a little bit nervous about shifting to this type of technology. But when I started kind of getting the message, like that real push from spirit, you got to do this. You know what I'm talking about. Like and you're going, I don't want. And I kept seeing all these videos. And this is not harsh towards anyone or anything, but with people with like colored glasses, and kind of this way of kind of grabbing people's attention in the newsfeed, which I really love colored glasses. I think they're super cool. But what struck me is I had this insight about, like, I didn't want to be the person with the colored glasses, that it just didn't resonate with me as much as I think they're super cool. And that in some aspect that I was thinking that I was going to have to conform to this formula or this expectation. And that was where my resistance came in. So it was this great kind of healing moment or healing opportunity. But what I'm saying is that Spirit kind of gives us this place where they can show us these insights about ourselves and also remind us of our strengths, that in the same areas where sometimes we might judge ourselves or feel like, people don't understand, or you might not want to conform in one way or the other, that's also usually the area where you have the most light to give. And you just have to go deeper into that full self-acceptance and not into self-repression, because it's dampening the energy all the time. And so when you're needing help of going, what are my strengths? What's my gift? Particularly if you're looking at a new career, if you want to do something different, if you're feeling kind of uninspired, what are your gifts? And your guides can come back and just remind you. And a lot of times it'll be circumstances where you're talking to someone and they just casually mention, oh, you know what? I knew I could count on you because you are so trustworthy. Or I love how you're able to see things creatively, or your use of color, is amazing. And you just start to get this feedback, okay? And use that feedback to work on and develop your own beautiful insights, okay? But you can ask your guides for help on that if you're struggling, if you're not seeing yourself clearly, if you're a little on the what I call the light worker perfectionist syndrome. If you have a little bit of that, then it's going to be important to really look at what are your strengths. What is it that we really need to focus on, and then you can bring that more to your forefront, which is fun. So for those of us that have been joining us at different periods, we're talking about spirit guides, really the ins and out, what they can do, what they can't do. I'm going to start kind of blending. We've been talking a lot about what they can do. I also want to mention some of the things that they can't. One is, and I mentioned this in the description, is they cannot hear your personal prayers without permission, because it's considered a divine, very sacred connection between you and Great Spirit, or whatever terminology you use. And so it's not for them to eavesdrop or listen to that. So if you've been kind of praying, going, oh, I need help, I need help, I need help, I need help, and then, going, guides, why? What's going on? Then invite them to be able to listen, because not only can they then watch your energy field and the fluctuations there, watch your decision making, and it's more of a direct way to understand what's happening and what you're asking for help with, and then they can mobilize in the same way that Great Spirit's mobilizing on your behalf. But you just got to give them that permission. And you can always, if you feel uncomfortable with that down the line, or you can take it away. So it's up to you. You're the boss. You're the CEO of whatever your name is. And so that's how it works. Another thing that they really can't do is influence our feelings in a direct way. So they can encourage feelings. So we talked about the joy guides, how they can lighten us up a bit by bringing in humorous circumstances, or like, yeah, we know this worked for her before. This made her laugh, or this kind of reminded her when she was painting, like how much joy there was in her heart to give. They know what has had worked in the past, so they can bring the opportunities forward, but we still have to interact and like bring it out of ourselves in order for that to happen. So that's not always a guaranteed. Like, you might be in a real funk and they've presented this like fabulous, here's this opportunity of, something funny for you, haha. And you're just like, I think we've been there. Don't lie, we've all been there. So in those particular cases, when that happens, then they kind of like regroup and gone, okay, we got to bring out the big guns. Layer 2, break down the wall there, chisel it away. Angels, on the other hand, so this is one of the differences. Our angels are not, they're in a separate category than our spirit guides. So I consider those that are helping us on the other side. The word I like to use is spirit ally. So we have animal totems, we have our spirit guides, we have angelic beings, and so forth, under the guise of being spirit allies. Angels, on the other hand, are able to influence our feelings in a direct way. So if you've read reports or had an experience, I had one that is too long to talk about right now, but where someone is getting ready to pass or something scary is happening, and all of a sudden it's this very direct, very strong, peaceful depth feeling, that feeling of you've just done like 3 hours of meditation and you are in the zone in a way that normally we consciously cannot experience. So it's a very deep sense of peace that pervades every cell. That is something that angelic beings can do, that spirit guides cannot. It's just out of their wheelhouse, and they're preserving our free will and preserving and supporting development as far as choices are concerned, whereas angelic beings, on the other hand, we can think of them as agents of grace. So they're working on behalf of kind of the greater divine plan and organizing things and helping us in a different way. So I don't want to get off on that tangent, but as far as feelings are concerned, they can't just switch a dial. Okay, they can help you create the choice for happiness, for love, for self-respect, for compassion, and they can bring you the opportunities to exercise it, but they can't do it for you. So bummer. But that's the great thing about it, is that's how we raise our vibration. We develop, we grow, is that every time we're stretching out, where we're going a little bit further, where we're in more love, when we're in more unity, when we're in self-respect, and we're truly in that space, is that then our frequency just elevates. Okay. And that's what our guides are helping us do, is to create that condition as much as possible in order to elevate, and so that we're moving on to the next level of unity. Okay. In that same line, they can't make you do one thing or another. Okay. They can put up a lot of roadblocks. So if we think about it in a literal way, say we've all agreed before you came into this incarnation that this was going to happen, and that when you got here, this is where you needed to go in order to experience this for balance, or whatever you need to experience it. But then let's say it comes time and the conscious self is like, nope, no thank you. I don't know who signed me up for this. it was you. It was you. And we start to kind of see this moment of like, no, I'm not interested in that. So then our guides might we're starting to go down this road, put up some barriers, some little caution signs, some flashy things. It's like, just ahead, trouble. Don't go this way. And that intuitive impression that's sitting in our gut going, not going the right way. So they can do all those things, and it can kind of gradually get more uncomfortable, but they can force you to respect the roadblock ahead of you, the concrete barrier. Okay. And if you are taking all those things and going, la la la, then, and it's your choice, you're driving the car. If you want to hit that concrete barrier head on, that's your prerogative as the soul. But what that comes with is when we do that, when we kind of get off track on ego, then we have healing work and realignment and trusting in ourselves and our path and our process that has to come back into play. And smashing into concrete barrier is not fun. It's hard. It's dark night of the soul kind of stuff. It's intense. Dealing with subconscious shadow work and light work is not all fairies and rainbows and hearts, and it's intense. It's really intense, and it's meant to be to that way that we're earning it. Okay, we're earning all the steps. Like my husband likes to watch American Ninja Warrior. When they're doing like the salmon ladder. Have you guys seen that? Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Anyway, it's like we're doing the salmon ladder. Okay, so if you've seen that, you know what I'm talking about. They cannot come in and take over your body and take over your life and do things for you. It's like your school professor can't take your test for you. They're not going to write your research paper. They gave you the assignment. They're not going to go to the library and just do all the work and then turn it in after they gave you the assignment, right? So we can sometimes people get really nervous when it's talking about spirit guides and feeling like they might be surrendering. They might have a situation where they might feel unsafe or afraid that they're going to attract a negative experience with spirit. But I think it's really comforting to understand that your guides are not able to come into your body without invitation, and your guides are not going to do that. And do everything for you. Okay, so you have this beautiful gift of free will and opportunity and consciousness and awareness, and you're here to express that. So that's their whole purpose, is to support that. So they're not going to circumvent it by being like, all right, this is ridiculous. Here you are, I've done it again. Let's take the wheel. No, they're just like, okay, let's revisit. So I like to think of, our guides don't get mad at us, okay? And I think that sometimes stuff around education, it can get really super linked in. Hi, Brooks. With a situation where you feel on a concern around learning. So say if you had trouble in school, or somebody wasn't very supportive of the way that you learned, or you just had a really hard time, that's super heavy, and it can last with you as you move forward to learn new things. And if you have that in your field, then especially if you learn differently, you can carry that into how you perceive or think about your guides, thinking that it's like you're transferring the thought of those people who maybe were hard on you, or were judging you, or you weren't performing well, that your guides are that way. They're not. They are the most loving, loving, kind, generous, gentle beings. I mean, absolutely. You couldn't push them away for 100th time and then 102, they go, I'm done. No. Every time it's like those amazing teachers who just, they keep working on, how do I deliver this in a way, they're super invested, how to deliver this in a way that this person needs, that they're going to receive it, that they'll understand it. And so they just kind of keep going back and bringing it to us, which is as much love as the first time that they gave it to you, to the 100th time. Okay. So hi, Tammy. It's good to see you. And so keep that in mind, is that they're not, having secret meetings about you and going, oi, and rolling their eyes. It's true love. Okay. And let's go to, because I wanted to talk about feedback. So they're taking their cues from how to communicate, and what it is that you're needing from the types of communications that you either have with them or you have with others. So if you're not communicating directly with them, so if you're not chatting with them and going, hey, this is what's going on, I really need some help, or I'm feeling stuck with this topic, or I just can't seem to move forward from this pattern, that's all great feedback that they take and work with, and it accelerates your growth because you're telling them directly, yeah, I'm still having a hard time with seeing this decision is the right one, but I see that you keep bringing me to it. So how do we get there? So that communication is amazing when you can give them that feedback. But if you are not communicating directly with them, then what ends up happening is that they're listening to conversations that you have with others and kind of picking up cues. They're watching your energy exchange and discerning what it is that you might need from that, and also the connection that they have with you. But you can, for accelerated growth, if you want to move quick, if you want to be able to, you notice this pattern and you want to really kind of bring the big guns to it, talk to your guides. Go, yeah, still struggling with this. What you got for me? And you can talk about what you still need some healing with, or what kind of support you need, or things that you're confused about. If you have questions about like how the universe works, duality, what is all this about? Whatever those questions are, you can kind of lay it at their feet and then let go. And somehow they'll answer it for you. This is kind of a little different than laying something, but I want to give you an example of time with spirit, because they're going to do whatever the divine timing is and whatever's the highest alignment when something's ready, because they recognize that everything has to be in alignment for things to turn out for the highest and the best. And so there's not a sense of like rush and time and, come on, a freak out over accelerated growth like sometimes we can do. But I had one time I asked one of my guides, I was in Barnes and Nobles. This is in North Carolina, so it's been a while. I was in North Carolina in Barnes and Nobles, and I was standing there, and there was this really cool book about mandalas, and it had these beautiful illustrations, lots of colors. It had all these affirmations with them, and it was awesome. But it was really expensive, and when I sat with it for myself, I was like, I just really don't want to spend this money right now. And it wasn't out of fear. It just was, it just doesn't feel right. Something's about it's not right, but I really want this book. So I sent it out to my guides, and I said, if this is in my highest and best, please find a way to bring this book to me. I let go. That was in December, so it was around Christmas time, one year, I believe. Maybe it was a little bit after that. And totally let go, had completely forgotten about that experience. And a year later, my husband received that book from one of his daughters for Christmas. That exact one, this mandala book. And it was such a beautiful full circle. Like, it was totally off my mind. So we can do those things, and you just don't know how and when it's going to be resolved, but let it go. It'll be resolved in the perfect form, in the perfect way. And I still have that book. And I really love it. So thank you to my guides. So any questions that you have, we're going to start kind of shifting into how to work with them a little bit more too. But if you have questions or things where you feel like, this isn't clear, or can you tell me about this? We haven't covered this about your guides, then go ahead and put that in the comment section, and I'll try and take a look over there if something feels unclear. Let's talk about not taking your power away. Your true guides are not going to take your power away. Like, we're talking about that free will. So they're all about empowerment and helping you to step into that growth and be comfortable so that you can stand alone. You've integrated the concepts. That's really their goals, for you to integrate the spiritual principles in such a way that you're living them, that you're being them, not that you know them, that you know them. Okay, so big difference between the two. And so they're not going to try and take over and be so forceful that you feel like, you know, why am I even here? Okay, they're not going to do that. They're not going to take your power away in the same way that the spiritual teachers who have the aspect of really wanting you to turn constantly over your power are ones that should be sending red flags. Okay, that's where cults get involved, and sometimes that can have really serious consequences. So, and guides are the same way. So just anything that where you feel like I'm having to give all this power away and to a significant level, you want to question what's going on there, because that's not a guide. Okay. I think that's where we are. Oh, I wanted to say circumventing divine timing. Okay. They cannot do that. So as much as we get here on the earth plane and we have ambition and desire and ego and want certain things to happen in certain times, if it's not in the highest and best for it to happen in that time frame, it won't. That doesn't mean that it's a no. It just means that it's a not right now. So whatever's the highest and best, you know, is unfolding. And if we can just surrender to it, isn't that always the best? It's just kind of like the consultant. You know, when you're hiring or bringing in a consultant, they're working with you in that level, in that way, where we can work with our consultant and we're going to grow a lot faster. We can ignore our consultant until we eventually have to listen to them. Or there's no other, we've exhausted all the other possible options, and all that's left is to try what it is that they told us in the first place. And then, isn't that great how that works? But they cannot circumvent something. So if from a divine timing perspective, okay, because there's a lot of different, we're all unified, so it's a unified field. There's a lot of different timelines and elements that are involved, and so they're aware of those types of things as well, especially when they're making changes to, we were talking about earlier, changes to your chart, or changes to your life journey and experience. When that happens, they're really looking at all those other timelines too. So how to get help. One is start talking to your guides. If you have not talked to them, or you just weren't sure how to, or didn't know how to start, there's so many different ways. You can, much like a prayer, but with the intention that your spirit guides pick it up. You can send those thoughts, hi, those energies out for them. You can also, some people like to do it in real time, kind of like the live stream with working with spirit, or you can also kind of leave something in an energetic package, like a little envelope addressed, you know, you can see or visualize to your spirit guides. So if you don't know names, that's fine. They know your frequency, and you're sending information and energy out on their frequency, so they're able to pick it up. You don't have to know a name. Sometimes guides don't even acknowledge names depending on what type of frequency they are. They might have numbers or other ways of identification, and all of those are safe and fine. But you can send those things out. Sometimes people are really tangible or need that feeling of like something's coming out in a physical way. And if that's the case, a journal is great. Get a journal that's just for communication with your guides. And so every time you get that journal out, it's you writing, this is stuff with the intention that they're picking it up, so that they're kind of sitting there with you going, oh, okay, yeah, I know. Sympathizing or giving us extra love or compassion. And that's another thing too. If you are here in the world and you're into all the duality and experiencing this kind of perspective, it's sometimes we just need to really truly know how loved we are by spirit, and loved we are conditionally. And if you have been feeling that sense of heaviness, ask your guides to just express to you the love that they feel for you, so that you can learn to trust their intentions and their motives are for your growth, or they're for your health. They're truly for the very best for you. So you can ask for them to convey that to you in either meditation or in aspects of your life or some other form of awareness. But be open to that, just so you can feel safe letting go. Tune in to, and when you're talking to them, give them feedback. Like, what's going on? How are things going? How sensitive? How are you picking up on them? So if you're feeling like it's kind of Charlie Brown's parents, when you're trying to talk to them, like you can hear or maybe pick up on some elements that they're sharing with you, but it's just not clear. Let them know that, because they can work on adjusting your chemistry and your sensitivity, especially if you shut it off when you were younger, because, we'll talk about that another time, but for different reasons, they can help you to dial back in, but they need your feedback to know what's working and what's not working. Additionally, you can, let them know what you need extra support in. Make it a priority to share with them and to connect in some way, to say hello, even if it's simple. It's just in the morning. Hello, hope you're doing well. Thanks for your help today. But really just acknowledging them is an amazing way to start you attuning to their frequency. So they're always attuned to your frequency because they're helping you in the whole process. So it's like you're their job 24/7 all the time. So they know your vibe better than you might know your vibe, okay? But you might not be attuned to theirs. And so the best way is just, even, like I said, even if you don't know their names, even if you don't know if it's male or female or how they like to present themselves, it doesn't matter. Just hello, good morning, how are you? The more that you do that, the more it's sending that signal, that energy out, and there starts to become an alignment there, and it makes a nice loop. So it'll become easier and easier for you to get on their frequency, and it makes communication a lot faster. So just even with something simple like that. And then ask for help. So my oldest two, my stepdaughters, Rachel and Emily, were just at a leadership conference for kids in high school. And one of the experiences they had, they were doing this ropes course, and they were blindfolded and had this, rope, and they were supposed to kind of feel, using their hands, to get around without hitting trees, with all these obstacles. And those that were there around them, that they were told, if you need help, just ask for help. And so what turns out to be the whole point of the exercise was just to get people to ask for help. And it was pretty much like an impossible ropes course. Like, you literally could not get through it without asking for help, even though some people would try. And so it's like you won right away, and you got to have your blindfold removed if you just asked for help. And so I think that's such a beautiful lesson in how we can work with our guides too, is just ask for help. Even if you don't know what you need, because sometimes we don't, even if you are just in total surrender mode, say, I need support. I'm not sure exactly what I need. I know that you can help me become clear on that and guide me along the process and guide me along the way. Please come into my life in such a way that I'm able to move through this the highest and best. So no matter what our experiences is, every experience is on a dimension, a scale of highest and best. And this might not be as fun, okay? However you want to look at it. And we might not always get to choose to avoid certain experiences because we set it up that way or we're contracted for that purpose. But within it, our free will determines how we incorporate it and how we integrate it and how we experience it. And we can be guided in the process to move that more to a supportive and positive integration than victimization. Okay, so we can get some extra help with that. And morning meetings, if you've been with me before and we've talked about spirit guides, we have probably talked about morning meetings. And that's just really sitting down with your guides, setting aside some devoted time and listening. This can also be you communicating. So usually when I've started, I might just listen to begin with and take notes like the secretary or the scribe or something. Some like getting what I'm hearing from spirit, I'm writing down in my little journal. And for a pretty significant period of that meeting. And then at the very end, I might say, thank you so much. I'm really appreciative of this. Can you please help me with some of these things? Okay. And then close it with love and gratitude. Those meetings can be 5 minutes. It can be 10 minutes. It can be a little bit longer than that. It really doesn't need to be. Okay, but just kind of a check-in on a daily basis. That's a great way for you to develop and grow your rapport with them. And it also gets you in the track of learning more about the insights that they have about what's going on, because we have one perspective and sometimes that's a little off from what's actually happening. So we think, oh, I'm supposed to do this, and that's what our mind is telling us, that this is the supposed to. I'm supposed to do this. And then spirit's like, wait, no, that's the mind. Come back, come to heart. Here we go. Check out this perspective. Okay. So I don't see any questions, which is awesome. But if you do have questions, feel free to reach out. I'd love to do it more in a group format, because then it's easier for, one person has a question. Usually it's like 3 other people also have the same question. So as we wrap up here, let me know. There's also, I want to just remind everybody to, I'm going to continue to just listen to spirit for different ways for us to connect and different things that they would like to share about, because when I sit down and working with them, it's always in alignment with what they want to talk about and what they want to share about. But if you want to stay involved or stay connected, then like Sedona Medium's Facebook page. That's probably the easiest way for Facebook Live in particular. Or you can join the mailing list too at my website, sedonamedium.com. We were talking about that blog post, and I wrote a post just for about 7 surefire affirmations to help you get in connection with your spirit guides. So a lot of times where people are struggling with that connection, or they just feel like it's a little mechanical, or it's not as fulfilling as they're looking for, usually it has to do with that there's an ego filter. Okay, so there's some sort of fear that might have developed that could be from other experiences in your life, but it can also be just fears that you have personally around spirit communication. One is like, I don't have time. Okay, I don't have time for this. Or, you know, what if I'm losing control because they're just telling me what to do, and then I don't get to make the decisions, and maybe I'm an indigo and think that's terrible. and it is. We don't want them making all of our decisions. They can give us some input, but um, and sometimes those fears are about discernment, being able to determine like what are my true intuitive messages and what are my ego or my mind like getting super involved. Hi, Susan. Um, so that's some of the fears, but these are affirmations that, and it talks a little bit about how to use the law of substitution to eliminate some of those negative fears and thoughts so your communication with your guides can be a lot clearer. But Brooks, I'm going to come to your question one second, but if you go to sedonamedium.com and then go over to the more tab for the blog, you'll see it as the blog post. Okay, so it'll show you the top 7 fears, and then also the affirmations that counteract that and explain a little bit more. But let's see, Brooks, how do you find out the name of your guides? Really good question. One, let me say that not all guides will identify by a name. Much like part of it depends on their frequency, what their experiences are. Some may have a name that they just kind of use to give us, but it's not really their name. Sometimes they might identify with numbers or number patterns. Sometimes it can be like a symbol. So I have a guide that comes through with a specific image of an owl, and every time it's them, it's here's the owl, and then here's the information. So and then sometimes it's their actual name, and it can be in multiple different languages. It can also be in language of light that we don't recognize. Okay, there can also be guides' names from a technical perspective that are like some sort of vocalization. Okay, so to get the name of your guide that you can really use to connect with them, whether it's somewhere somewhere on their spectrum, one is to go into a meditative state or a really relaxed state. So if you've done some work with meditation before, it'll really help you because you've got to get clear, and clarity, and then increasing your sensitivity or increasing your vibrational rate makes spirit communication and contact a lot easier. Okay, so we want to get into that really relaxed place, very peaceful place, and then you can ask your guides in particular to come through. And then if they come through, they might have a message. They might show you some imagery that will help you to identify who they are, or maybe what they do, or maybe what they're trying to teach you. But before they go, if they haven't given you a name, then you can ask, how can I identify you? And then from there. Now, if you are having trouble with the self-guided process, or that is a little bit too difficult, then you can use meditations. There's lots of guided meditations. You have to really use your discernment energetically for those that are bringing that information through, and just make sure it feels in alignment, or it makes you feel very uplifted when you connect with their voice. But you can use a guided meditation for that purpose as well, of getting more information about them. And a lot of times in that, you'll get clues about, is this a teaching guide who's coming through to teach me about some stuff? Is it a protector guide who's going, stop speeding? Or is it someone else? Now, a lot of times our primary guides, not all the time, but they'll have a tendency to stay more in the background. And usually it's our teaching guides or other guides, sometimes joy guides, that are popping in and identifying themselves more directly. And then it's a little bit later we might get more information about our primary guide. The reason for that is that they really don't want us to focus so much on them, on their personality, on things that might distract us, so that it becomes a situation where we create dependency, because that's the opposite of what they want us to do, to be dependent. They're helping us, but not in a way that would be codependent in any way. So they don't want us to get too distracted by all the meat of everything else, of what they look like, or, what their symbol is, or those types of things. And also recognizing that, humans have a tendency to like want to get into that manipulation at times where it's when we're struggling and having a hard time, and it's like, all right, Susan, we really need to talk about XYZ, and it takes the focus from the heart space for you into like wanting to try and influence them in some way. And they're great with boundaries, you guys. Listen, even if you have an interesting relationship with boundaries, so maybe that's something as an empath you've been learning, or has been kind of a struggle, or you're a giver naturally, your primary guides have strong, good boundaries. And they have to. It's part of their training, and it's part of like the qualifications to go, are you going to be a good fit to be a guide? So anyway, so you usually meet those other guides first, and then later start to develop even more of a relationship with your primary guide. Okay, so Brooks, let me know if that helped. If that helped to answer your question there. Okay, sometimes you might know, you might just have a knowing. I had one guide who I went to sleep and woke up, and I had realized that for an hour I had been chanting this name and spelling it. And as I was spelling, because it was like an alien name. It was not a name that we would recognize here. And so it was like spelling it over and over again. And when I came out of that, state, I realized I'd been doing that for an hour, trying to hold on to the name. And so that was one way I just happened to work. That was unsolicited, but it just came to me in that way. So you might ask for evidence of your guides to come through, or a name, and then you see it start to show up, or you get some synchronicities or something along those lines that indicate this is the name to use. Okay, but as always, don't get caught too much into the sense of feeling like our guides are impersonal, or our guides are not here and helping you to develop a relationship with them. They are. They truly love you, and the most incredible capacity, and are our greatest, most beautiful cheerleaders. And more than anything, they want to work with us as consultants and companions, and help us to truly make our life and our experience easier. And by doing that is simply the process of us acknowledging them, saying hello, starting to build that rapport, and choosing to let them lead us also in how we can connect with them. Okay, so listen to your heart. All right, these are not abstract figures. Okay, these are not people who are scary. They're not mean because they're putting you through some stuff. Not at all. And so you don't have to be intimidated or feel like, oh, I have to do all these right things or do this exact process, or I'm not going to be able to connect with my guides. Okay, that's not true. Thank goodness it's not true. And we can release also some of those fears we might have around education or being judged and that sort of thing, because they're truly here just to support us as much as possible through the entire experience. And there's such an amazing deep love that is shared when we come back from our incarnation and get to see them for the first time, and really have a greater perspective of all the different elements and what it was that we were learning. It's just gratitude upon gratitude upon gratitude. Unbelievable. So just know that your guides are always with you. They're always supporting you. Okay, they're not going to do all of it for you, but there's a lot of ways that you can work with them in collaboration to make it easier on yourself, make it easier on others. Right now I'm working with one of my guides now, because we have one of our daughters who's going through quite a bit of stuff, and so communication between the two of us is a little bit challenging. So I've been working with my guides about need you in mediation. Let's do some mediation and some work on things. So always just keep in communication with them. And thank you so much for, oh good, I'm glad that helped, Brooks. Thank you so much for just taking the time for yourself, for your guides today, for making it a priority to show up for yourself. I'm glad that we got to connect. And I hope that you'll join me in the future and stay connected at Facebook, Sedona Medium, and we'll continue these quests with spirit to keep growing. So I hope you guys have a great day, and pray for us that we don't get like 20 inches of snow, because Sedona has one snow plow and it's on loan from Flagstaff, I think. So let's hope for the best. All right, take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.